Guys, it's going down this weekend at UFC 294 with Makhachev stepping into a rematch with Volkanovski. My partners at DraftKings are offering an incredible offer for all new customers who sign up using the promo code Sonnen. New customers who bet just $5 on any of this weekend's fights will receive $200 in bonus bets instantly. You can even use your bonus bets on DraftKings same fight parlays for a shot at an even bigger payout. Combine multiple bets together from the same fight, including number of rounds or method of victory. Remember, DraftKings is the only place where you can bet same fight parlays. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy. So click on the link below and download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. This thing happened so fast and it was so awesome. It was so cool that Islam didn't care who the opponent was. Bring him on. And it was so cool that Volk was in a position, mentally and physically, to go out and to compete with the best guy in the world for an opportunity to take a spot. I mean, you said you had two professional attitudes. It was an incredible thing. But what got missed because of the excitement, right? We get drunk on the excitement of this fight announcement. And fight announcements are very different when they're unexpected. Like, that would have been a good fight, sure, Volk and Islam, sure. But that opportunity was there. That opportunity's been sitting there since Perth, which was back in March. It's very different to announce it 11 days before, unexpected. There's just something about that. And this has been tested before, like Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo at the time that happened, and solely because of Conor McGregor. Because of Conor McGregor's build and Jose Aldo's resume. I want to say he was like 11 years unbeaten, something crazy for Aldo. As big as that fight was, when it got interrupted, Jose comes out, oh my God, we just lost this massive fight. Oh my gosh. And you insert Chad Mendes, the numbers actually did bigger than projected for Aldo versus McGregor. And there had never been a backstory that involved Chad and Conor. There was something exciting about the last minute, the unexpectedness. And I share that with you because that overwhelmed the story, but there's still a story, and I'd like to know what it is. By example, who else was offered? Who got the call before Volkanovski got the call? Did Benny DeRouche get offered? Justin Gaethje would have known very quickly. Very quickly he would have known. Not to mention, he's there. He believes he's a number one contender. He would have known. Could have been a weight issue where he couldn't make weight. Could have been I'm not interested in it. Could be that he wasn't offered, but he would have known. He would have known because Ali Abdelaziz, who represents Islam, would have known, and Ali also represents Justin Gaethje. So did DeRouche get the offer and said no? Did Gaethje get the offer and said no? I would be curious. I would like to know how that all works. Because there is something very meaningful about being a number one contender. For me, there is something that has a history and a lineage about being a number one contender that dates back to boxing, but we take all of our cues from boxing. We were 4 or 5 years into this sport before anybody used the word training camp. We were literally the better part of a decade before somebody went out to a different location as they prepared for a fight. That's a boxing thing. We took everything from boxing. We had wrestlers that went over and did a great job in MMA. And in their entire wrestling career, including through the Olympic Games, they had never jumped rope a day in their life. But now they're jumping rope every day, right? Because the boxers did it, and they're looking in a mirror, and they're moving around. I don't have a problem with it. I'm just sharing for you. We take all of our cues from boxing, but in boxing, number one contender means something. What does Charles Oliveira plan to do with it? He was told he becomes the number one contender if he beats Benny DeRouche. Benny DeRouche was told he becomes the number one contender if he beats Charles Oliveira. The history of our sport has something known as a last man standing clause. So for me, as soon as Oliveira bitches out, it goes to Benny. For me, that's not the way this game is played. I just argue that it should be considered to be played that way. Either way, Charles was told, if you win this fight, you become a number one contender. Charles won the fight. Charles is no longer the number one contender. And Charles is not positioning himself in any fashion to reclaim what was already his. In no fashion is he out there make-believing that he is going to contest with the winner of this match. As a matter of fact, it looks very much like Justin Gaethje will be doing that, which I support. I'm just wondering, before we got to this point, who was offered the fight? And you must understand, if you have a number one contender and you offer him the fight, if he doesn't take the fight, you're now done. Like, your obligation is done. Win this fight, right? Charles versus Benny. Win this fight. Fight for the championship. Well, that's not an absolute the way that it sounds. What that means is, if you win this fight, I will offer you, in good faith, a championship fight. Once you turn that down, we move on. And I would be very curious, because I think that would play to Gaethje. I think Gaethje hit it out of the park with his one sentence. Stop Dustin Poirier, get a title fight. Yeah, that sounds irrefutable. But get a world title fight means be offered a world title fight. I'm curious, was Gaethje offered this fight? Now, you only have so many guys, right? I don't mean if somebody chickened out behind the scenes for whatever reasons that you dismiss them and find somebody else. You're going to do what's best for you. But there's certain situations where you can't do what's best for you. You've already made a deal. So you've got to honor that deal. I'm just clarifying for our audience that the honoring of a deal is to make the offer. If the offer is turned down, we have the right to move on. I don't think that anybody has proven that they should be and deserve to fight for a title more than Benny DeRouche. In spite of him losing his last fight, I still think that he is number one. I think he has the strongest argument, particularly when you understand that nobody wants to fight Islam. Islam, the contender, really couldn't get matches. It was very tough for him. Islam, the champion, just had a guy say no. Like that's happening right now. Islam can't get matches. So as I make my case for Benny DeRouche, whatever you say to counter that, I am going to come in and play the card that Benny DeRouche agreed to fight Islam. That fight was signed. That fight was broken up at a press conference where Dana White says he's going to make the fight, and Joe Rogan just grabbed me in the back, told me not to make the fight. I would love to get an elaboration on that. But the bottom line is, he already agreed to do it. And it wasn't for money, and it wasn't for fame. I think it was a main event, but it wasn't even on a pay-per-view, just by example. There was no title. He just agreed to do it. That's the name that came out of the hat. I think he has the strongest argument. But I'd like to know, was Volkanovski the first guy called? I'm not kicking shade on anybody, by the way. Like, if we find out the guys turn it down, I don't have a problem with that. I would just be curious. Was he the first guy called? Well, what did the list look like? If he hadn't said yes, Volkanovski, who were we going to call next? Considering Gaethje was already going to be there and went through a full training camp as, right? It would seem as though that would be a guy. It would seem as though Charles is, or I apologize, Benny is right in there. And it would seem as though, as far as Charles Oliveira goes, the irony of him not understanding this situation, I mean, Charles Oliveira, who complained about it being in Abu Dhabi over and over, it's a very big deal to him. He complained about it being in Abu Dhabi. That was a home field advantage for Islam, who does not live in Abu Dhabi, who has never lived in Abu Dhabi. Either way, this was his complaint. The irony there is Charles was only being given the opportunity because it was in Abu Dhabi. There is zero chance, and I do mean zero, that that fight takes place at Madison Square Garden or T-Mobile or the Forum or anywhere within the States or anywhere that the organization regularly plays. It had to take place in Abu Dhabi or it doesn't involve Charles. So passing on the opportunity and believing that Islam is going to contest and defend somewhere other than Fight Island eliminates Oliveira from contention. And it's one of those Sandhagen moments where I'm not convinced he's aware of any of that.